Hello and welcome to Mystic Visions with DrShiny. This is a monthly tarot card reading for Aquarius for the month of April. So as always, if you are a subscriber, I am happy to, at the end of the reading, draw you a couple extra cards from some more specific clarity. And please just let me know in the comments if that's something you would like. But let's go ahead and get started with your reading for Aquarius. Okay, so okay. Alright, so for the current situation here, we have the Six of Swords. So you're going through a little bit of a difficult transition. There's something that you have to go through which maybe you don't exactly want to, but in the long run this is seen as kind of a positive. This is something that is good for you that you're going to have to go through one way or the other. So, it's a little inevitable. And the idea there is, sometimes we don't want to do the things that are good for us or that we have to do. But in the long run, it's kind of like ripping off a Band-Aid. It's something that's painful for a temporary time, and it'll work out better in the future. Now, what's crossing you or influencing you here is this King of Wands. The King of Wands is a doer. He is, wands represent a sort of action or will, ability to just sort of jump in and get things done. I always viewed the King of Wands a lot like a big major CEO, right? So, I especially think of like Elon Musk in this regard. Whether you like him or hate him is irrelevant. He is a doer, right? He gets things done. He accomplishes a lot of things, and he does that by, yes, getting involved himself, but also because he's really good at motivating people who have the abilities and skills to do things in such a way that things happen. So with this King of Wands energy, Wands representing doing, but this isn't just doing on a personal level or putting in all the effort yourself. This King is really good at projecting this mindset and getting other people organized to get things done. So he's a CEO type. He's a businessman for sure. Now, this being what's crossing you, it's either that you're having to become this type of a person, which involves some sort of delegation that you're not entirely used to. You might want to be more involved on a personal level. Or it's kind of this person is like riding your back and trying to make you a little bit more tempered in that business relation, or trying to get you to go somewhere, trying to get you to do something. And you might be pretty happy just being like stagnant or not doing anything, but this is kind of a kick in the behind, right, to get you going. And so that can be there's kind of two possible translations to that, especially in regards to this difficult transition. So you're either having to become a lot more responsible, or well, either way, you're having to become more responsible. But that's either because you're seeking to be this King of Wands, or this King of Wands is kind of like on your back. So what you're moving away from, or what you had in the recent past, is this Nine of Swords. And this is heavily involved with anxiety. There's always some... Well, in this card here, there's a kind of a cat, and he's up a tree. And the swords, which represent thoughts, are all underneath him. And there's all these scary things around him that are kind of speaking into his ears. So the idea here is something real may have scared him up into that tree, but now that he's up in that tree, what's really scaring him are his own thoughts about like how things could go bad. It's worrying about the worry instead of just being afraid, right? This is what separates sort of fear from anxiety. Fear has like a real cause or a real reason behind it, where anxiety is kind of allowing yourself to be afraid of kind of what might happen, or essentially thoughts in your brain instead of some real thing to be afraid of. And you're moving away from this type of an energy, which is a good thing. So you're learning a little bit to not listen to those things in your head quite so much, and to instead focus or control your focus in order to control your mindset or your mental health, right? It takes a toll if you're constantly worried or afraid. And if you want to have some good mental health, you have to be able to not just be the product of what's going on around you, but to actively take the reins on how you're going to feel and how you're going to live your life, right? And some people really haven't figured that out at all. They're very, very passive with their thoughts and the way that they feel. And I find these people tend to not be gatekeepers at all for what they consume. They'll sit down and watch programs that are just ghastly, right? Just horrible. And bad morals, you know. My fiance at the time, my wife now, was kind of surprised that, you know, I tend to be a very open person. But there were a couple episodes of the show Black Mirror that really disturbed me on a fundamental level, especially in the mindset that I was in at the time. And I just said, I don't want to watch this. And that kind of surprised her, because I tend to, be pretty open to whatever's going on, especially, that's a pretty fun show, pretty cool show. But I was very aware of the effect that the episodes I was watching were having on my mentality, and I decided I did not want to be feeling that. I did not want to be thinking those things. So sometimes it's about learning to kind of control your focus, Now what you're moving toward is this Seven of Cups in the reverse. And you can see in the Seven of Cups there's all these little, let me turn it up right so you can see it a little bit better, but there's all these little flowers or vines that are kind of whispering, and they're being a little bit seductive and attempting to get this figure to choose them, right? And so there's this energy of like a bunch of things coming at you from all kinds of directions, trying to get your attention, trying to woo you, right? But in the reverse, it's like there's a resistance to making this choice, which is the right way to handle this situation, actually. Because what happens is that none of these people who are really in your ear trying to get your attention or trying to get something out of you, none of them are really working in your best interest. They're kind of more looking out for themselves. So you're moving toward an energy of having a little bit more of an ability to say no, a little bit more of an ability to recognize when things are not working in your benefit and people are kind of just looking out for themselves. So you're learning a little bit about human nature through this, and there's a transition that's occurring in the process. So, I'm not quite clear on how this relates to the Nine of Swords, other than you can have a lot of anxiety that comes from the unpredictability of other people and that kind of thing, not knowing whether they have your best interest in mind or not, worrying about what they think of you and stuff like that. Whereas if you kind of get into this mentality that you're headed toward where you don't really care what people want out of you, you know what you want, then that becomes nullified completely. There's no reason to be worried about what other people want if you really know what you want, right? Because you're not going to be constantly capitulating to try to get something out of other people, right? So a good sort of a confidence building is what we have here. You're going to be going through this situation to teach you how to be more confident, and to give you a little cheat or a little shortcut. The faster you learn that confidence, you learn to just like set aside your trepidation and your fears and just kind of go with it, the easier this transition will be. And it's a difficult transition, yes, but you have to go through it. So you might as well just sort of jump in and just do the thing, right? Rip the Band-Aid off. And that involves gaining this confidence. Now, your foundation card here represents sort of like the overall lesson, or what's being taught to you through this situation, what's going on here, what's welling up from the subconscious. And you have the wheel in the reverse. So the wheel represents these cycles, this sort of natural randomness almost that occurs. It's not really random, but it seems random because of how many infinite complex variables are going on in the world around you. But in reality, everything is kind of happening for a specific reason or a specific purpose. And you've been a little bit resistant to feeling that. So there's kind of an energy of wanting things to be the way that they should be, or chasing after a sort of image in your head rather than kind of coming to grips with reality as it is. And so this is going to involve, instead of getting nervous around people or feeling like other people have like a power over you, or that they're bigger, better people than you. This is to step back and actually see that we're all humans, and we all start somewhere, and we all have relative levels of success and whatnot. And there's nothing really to make you feel anxious about that if you take a step back and just recognize that we're kind of all in the same boat. Another way of interpreting this in your foundation is to become a little bit less resistant to just the natural flow of things, the way that things are going, and trying to make the situation turn out a particular way. You kind of got to let go and let the situation be what it is. And that's an element of confidence itself. Now, in your crowning thoughts, which kind of represents your conscious mind, what's going on, front and center, you got the strength card. And so the strength card, it doesn't actually represent like physical strength or having, muscles and things like that. It's really more about inner willpower. The little figure there in this card, in almost every deck, there's like a very fragile young girl, and she's almost always got her hands clutching a beast or a lion or something that could really just eat her easily. But she exudes this confidence that is equaled by none other than that lion. So that lion is not afraid. He's the king of the jungle, right? Or the king of the Sahara. I don't know. He's the top of the food chain. He doesn't really have a whole lot to fear. Everything else fears him. But because this female figure here is not fearing him, he kind of views her as an equal. He views her as she's supposed to be here, because she's not running from me, she's not prey. And her confidence, her ability to get through this situation is exactly what protects her from the jaws of the lion. And so this is, being on your mind, you recognize that there's a value in this strength. You know that there is a reason for you to have this. And so it seems as though in this situation it's kind of odd. Usually the foundation kind of drives what's going on a little bit more than the conscious mind, because the conscious mind tends to has to play catch up to whatever's going on in the subconscious. But in this case, you're aware of this transition that needs to occur. You're aware that you need this confidence, that you need this inner strength. And so the subconscious is really kind of more providing the rules for what's going on for you, which is this sort of, or rather than the rules, that's a bad way of putting it. It's providing the paradigm that you need to accept to be able to gain this confidence, which is to say there's nothing special about anyone. It's kind of most successful people kind of fake it till they make it. So that confidence is really, it's not something that you just get from having skills or being good at something. It's something that you project from the inside out. It's like you're like a boat traveling through the water. The wake doesn't drive the boat forward. The wake comes off of the boat, right? So having all of that ability and having all those victories and being really good at what you do, that doesn't come first. The confidence actually comes first, because you have to have that confidence to try new things and to be able to fail in order to get all those victories underneath your belt. So people tend to think about this backward. They think, I got to get all these skills, I got to do really well, and then I'll be confident. But it's actually precisely the reverse. You have to have that confidence before you can get all those victories. So your advice for the situation here is this 5 of Swords in the reverse. So this is to avoid confrontations, right? To avoid getting too wrapped up in my way or the highway, or that I know the right way for it to be and you don't. Avoid that, and instead focus on ways of encouraging people to recognize their own strengths. So if somebody has a particular weakness and you're aware of it, don't pick on the weakness. If you're trying to develop and cultivate people, don't look for the things that are bad. Instead, look for their strengths. Look for ways to not sort of fight against what's going on in a person, but to get them to focus on what's going to work out the best, right? So focus on that positive. From a religious perspective, don't be looking for the devil in everybody and trying to get rid of it. Instead, focus on looking for the God in everyone and trying to bring it out, trying to let that light shine. So that's what you're really, that's your advice for this situation and how to get through this. Now, the environment for you here is the 5 of coins, but it's in the reverse. You had a lot of cards in the reverse in this reading, actually. And most of the cards that are in the upright have to deal with, where you've come from, your situation, and what's going on. So I think it indicates a really good direction. And then these other cards in the periphery that are in the reverse are telling you not to get too distracted from that goal, but to stay focused. That 5 of coins typically represents needing help, but in the upright it's like you're seeking that help. You're not afraid to ask for help, as would be indicated by this card in the upright. You actually are seeking help, and that's probably why you're reading this tarot video, and I'm sure I'm not the only one that you've sought for help. So there are resources available around you, and these things can help you, but you have to be careful not to fall into the trap of thinking that some external source is going to give you this confidence. It's something that you have to just take. It's something that you have to do for yourself, and you're not going to feel like you deserve it, but you have to do it anyway, and that's really what gets you there. Now, your fears card, you have this 5 of cups in the reverse, and so the 5 of cups, again, I like to start by explaining the upright. So the 5 of cups is about having, he started out with 5 cups, but 3 of them spilled, and he's too busy looking at those 3 spilled cups and not really paying attention to the 2 that are still upright. And so it's kind of like a way of having a glass half full, empty mentality, or being a little pessimistic, and it can lead to further disaster if you're not keeping in mind what's still going well for you. So, but this is in the reverse, so that means that you're essentially afraid of having these sort of weaknesses, these intellectual weaknesses, or these vulnerabilities, and that can be a problem in excess itself. So you have to be careful about that. Part of confidence is being okay with your weaknesses, being okay with your shortcomings. We talk about there's studies that show that like very severely homophobic people tend to be more or tend to be attracted to the same sex, and so they're sort of fighting those tendencies so hard that they're overcompensating, and they're hiding or masking the way that they truly feel about those things. So having this need to really project a certain way of being, or to avoid some sort of shortcomings or vulnerabilities is perceived as a weakness by others. So be careful with that, right? This full of great advice in this reading. I'm loving it. Now, the overall message, or the overall outcome, is this 10 of Swords in the reverse. And the 10 of Swords represents a kind of like when you come to the end of the road, there's always this light at the end of the tunnel. But in the reverse, you might be having a hard time seeing this light at the end of the tunnel. You might be having a hard time seeing how this works out for the positive in the long run. But it can also mean that you're very resistant to letting go or being defeated. So you might always think that failure is not an option, that sort of thing. So that's really something to get over in this situation where you're searching for confidence, because you absolutely don't want to feel like failure is not an option. You want to be able to freely fail, and because failure is how you learn, right? If you're not failing, you're not trying hard enough, you're not innovating enough. And so failure is not something that very successful people are afraid of. They love it, and because it's an opportunity to grow. I think it was Thomas Edison who tried like 1,000 different times to invent the filament for the light bulb, and he said he didn't fail 1,000 times. He found 1,000 ways how not to make a light bulb. So that's the kind of attitude that you're looking for. That's confidence, right? That's knowing that even if you fail 1,000 times, all you need is the 1,001st time for it to go right to be successful. And that's the overall message for you here. Very cohesive message here today. Generally when this happens, it's there's somebody that really needed to hear this. So even if you didn't feel like this resonated for you today, it just wasn't for you. But there's somebody out there that really needs this. So anyway, thanks for watching. And again, if you want some more personal advice, I'll be happy to draw a couple cards as long as you click that subscribe button. And I will see you guys next time. Bye bye.